That was an explosive exchange. Mr. Barr is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great hearing. And some taxpayer funding of basic science makes sense to me. I represent the University of Kentucky. They have a robust research enterprise financed in part by federal grants. The National Institutes of Health, the National Science Foundation, EPSCoR, other programs. But we should not allow a modest government role in funding basic science mutate into a full-blown state-directed, deficit-financed, government-subsidized industrial policy that attempts to mimic or imitate China's communist central planning model, a model that I would argue is actually China's Achilles heel. After all, the reason China has to resort to theft of intellectual property, the reason why China is forcing tech transfers through breaking the rules is that they're communists, and communists break the rules. And communists don't have innovators, they don't have entrepreneurs, because there's no organic capital formation, and there's a misallocation of resources when the central government in Beijing is forcing a civil-military fusion. There's a misallocation of resources when incentives don't work and entrepreneurs lose their private property because they don't believe in private property. So I would just caution as we talk about the competition between the United States and China on capital investment into technology, to not realize that we have a natural competitive advantage, and that is that we're capitalists, and that we have a free enterprise system in the deepest, most liquid capital markets in the world that finances a lot of this technology development. Now, we need to protect our intellectual property better, but we have the advantage naturally because we have a superior system. Mr. Wolf, can you describe for this committee the differences in the ways investments in advanced and emerging technologies occur in the United States versus the PRC?
You know, it's a messy system here, and that messiness is its beauty. We want, there it's a directed system that says this is what we're going to develop or we're going to steal and we're going to build it. Here, we want free, undirected research. You want pure experimentation. You want irreverent thinkers, people reaching into each other's other disciplines and coming up with big ideas, and then you have the private market with the greedy incentive to want to make money and commercialize these technologies. Starts with a foundation of undirected basic science research, people that can tinker and experiment and come up with ideas, be criticized by their ego-driven peer competitors in scientific review, and then that gets published and people like us spot it and say, we want to start a company with that. We think that we can build the next Genentech or the next Google. And so the free market should be left to do its thing. The state-directed is a inferior model. We should not copy China. China is trying to copy us, and they don't have the culture to be able to do it.
Is there risk that if we go down the road of more and more taxpayer-financed science, that risks displacing the vibrancy of the free enterprise capital markets and that real innovative part? Now, I believe in the commercialization that comes out of IP that comes out of universities, taxpayer-funded, but on the whole, should we remove the impediments to our capital markets so that that venture capital, that private equity can go into these startups to really produce that innovative thinking that produces the advanced technology that gives us that competitive edge?
Definitely. Capital markets should be as free as possible so that people can take risks, lose their money if they're wrong or unlucky, make money if they're right or lucky. We do want lots of basic science funding because the free market won't fund that. We won't fund underdirected research. That's a national asset. We want to invest in that asset so that it can then be transferred to the private equity firms, the public equity firms, the venture capitalists like us, who have a great motivation to want to turn that into profit.
Are there Mr. Wolf, are there currently ways where the U.S. government, either through regulation or law, is currently hindering private sector investments in advanced technologies?
I believe so, and I don't believe that it's intentional, but the unintended consequence of dealing with the last crisis, you look at Sarbanes-Oxley and other things that look at these things and say, how do we prevent that from happening again, end up slowing down the next wave and the next boom. So the more regulation that we have on capital markets trying to protect what happened in the past, which is unlikely to repeat itself, the more we hinder innovation.
What are your thoughts on Chinese companies listed on U.S. exchanges seeking to crowd out U.S. firms in the marketplace?
I haven't really seen it in specific instances. I can do a little bit more research to see where that's been a zero-sum phenomenon. Again, we want free capital markets. We want people come here to be able to build their companies and capitalize them on the markets. We want the free flow of capital coming into the United States. We don't want it going into the CCP.
Great. Thank you for your testimony, and Mr. Chairman, thank you for the hearing. Yield back.